You think women reward loyalty and honesty. They reward leverage and emotional control. You're good man. Identity isn't noble. It's predictable, exploitable, and strategically weak. You were trained to see women through a moral filter. Kindness equals attraction. Loyalty equals security. Emotional transparency equals intimacy. That lens is not romantic, it is domesticated. You interpret female behavior through fairness. You assume effort should be rewarded. You assume consistency should be valued. You assume goodness has weight. It doesn't. Attraction is not a moral system. It is a selection system. And selection does not reward effort. It rewards advantage. The first mistake 99% of men make is confusing virtue with value. You think being patient increases your worth. You think being available makes you rare. You think sacrificing proves strength. It proves controllability. When you respond instantly, you signal surplus time. When you over-explain, you signal insecurity. When you prioritize her schedule over your mission, you signal hierarchy. You placed her above you without negotiation. You call it respect. Selection reads it as lower rank. This is the romantic lens, interpreting behavior through intention instead of power. You think, she said she likes nice guys. She said she wants honesty. She said she values communication. You hear promises. You ignore outcomes. Watch behavior, not statements. If she says she wants stability but responds strongest to unpredictability, the behavior is truth. If she says she wants emotional openness but withdraws, when you reveal vulnerability too early, the reaction is truth. Selection responds to emotional impact, not moral alignment. This is where most men fracture. You want love to be safe, predictable, negotiated. But attraction feeds on tension, on uncertainty, on perceived loss. When you remove tension by over-validating, over-giving, over-explaining, you flatten polarity. You become safe. Safe is comfortable. Comfortable is forgettable. You were taught that reducing friction builds connection. In reality, reducing friction reduces charge. No charge, no current, no pull. You become the reliable option, the stable option, the good guy, which often means the replaceable option. The romantic lens also blinds you to timing. You think consistency builds desire. It builds familiarity. Desire requires space. Space creates curiosity. Curiosity sustains tension. When you text constantly, you eliminate curiosity. When you make your intentions obvious immediately, you eliminate mystery. When you try to reassure her insecurity, you absorb emotional responsibility that was never yours. You step into a caretaker frame. Attraction does not reward caretakers. It evaluates leaders. And leadership is not loud dominance. It is internal sovereignty. The romantic lens teaches you to seek approval. The strategic lens teaches you to evaluate. There is a difference. Approval says, am I good enough for her? Evaluation says, does she qualify for my time? One position is chasing selection. The other is controlling access. Most men live in a subconscious audition. They are constantly performing jokes, attentiveness, emotional availability, hoping to secure status in her perception. That frame is submission. When your emotional state depends on her responses, she owns leverage. If her delayed reply shifts your mood, you surrendered power. If her validation boosts your confidence, she holds your baseline. If her withdrawal triggers anxiety, you are already attached to outcome. Attachment before investment is strategic suicide. The romantic lens tells you attachment proves depth. It proves dependency. Dependency creates imbalance. Imbalance creates hierarchy. Hierarchy determines attraction, and the man who needs the outcome more loses. This chapter is not telling you to be cruel. It is telling you to be aware. You cannot operate effectively in a system you misunderstand. Women do not wake up plotting manipulation. Selection is not conscious malice. It is subconscious filtering. But filtering is ruthless. If you present yourself as overly eager, overly accommodating, overly available, you are filtered. Not because you are bad, because you are abundant. Scarcity signals value. Abundance signals replaceability. You were told love is about giving more. Selection is about withholding strategically. Until you destroy the romantic lens, every move you make will be guided by hope instead of leverage. Hope is not a strategy, it is a gamble. And 99% of men keep gambling with the same currency: validation, attention, emotional exposure. Then they act shocked when the return is inconsistent. The lens must die before the man can change. Right now, you don't need better lines. You need a different operating system. Because the battlefield isn't moral, it's selective. Attraction is not chemistry, it is leverage. You keep trying to increase connection. You should be measuring imbalance. The person who needs the outcome less controls the interaction. This is the first law, not fairness, not compatibility, leverage. Emotional leverage is created when one party is more invested, more reactive, more available, more predictable. Most men hand this leverage away within the first week. You respond fast, you double text, you clarify intentions. You try to lock in certainty. You think certainty builds security. Certainty kills tension, and tension is the engine. When she knows exactly how you feel, exactly where you stand, and exactly that you will remain regardless of her behavior, you remove risk from her side. No risk, no urgency. Scarcity creates urgency. Uncertainty creates focus. Delayed access creates perceived value. You were trained to offer reassurance. Selection rewards restraint. Understand this clearly. Emotional availability is only powerful when it is scarce and controlled. If you give it freely, it becomes background noise. When a woman senses that your emotional state is unaffected by her fluctuations, something shifts. You become stable, but not in the predictable sense. Stable in self-containment. Self-containment signals autonomy. Autonomy signals options. Options signal value. You do not need to announce options. You signal them by behavior. Men lose leverage through over-disclosure. You confess insecurities early. You reveal long-term plans prematurely. You seek validation disguised as vulnerability. Vulnerability without earned trust is not depth. It is exposure. Exposure lowers perceived strength when it precedes positioning. Position first, reveal later. This is not about manipulation, it is about sequencing. Machiavellian law is simple. Control information, control perception. Control perception, control power. When you narrate your feelings constantly, you surrender mystery. When you explain every silence, you erase curiosity. When you over-communicate, you eliminate ambiguity. Ambiguity is not confusion, it is space. Space allows projection. Projection fuels fascination. You are obsessed with being understood. Attraction thrives on being interpreted. When she cannot fully decode you, she invests cognitive energy. She thinks, she analyzes, she wonders. Cognitive investment precedes emotional investment. If she does not think about you when you are absent, you have no leverage. Emotional leverage also depends on boundaries. Most men confuse boundaries with ultimatums. Boundaries are internal standards that do not require announcement. If she cancels last minute and you rearrange instantly, you reward instability. If she tests your availability and you comply every time, you confirm low demand. High-value behavior is not loud, it is selective. Selective attention, selective time, selective emotional access. You do not chase clarity, you observe patterns. If she pulls away and you pursue harder, you amplify imbalance. If she pulls away and you remain unchanged, you restore symmetry. The one who adjusts least controls the frame. Frame is reality dominance. Whoever defines the emotional tempo dictates the dynamic. If she can accelerate or decelerate your mood at will, she controls the tempo. Control your tempo. Respond, don't react. Engage, don't attach. Invest proportionally, not preemptively. The mistake 99% of men make is front-loading investment. You give boyfriend-level energy during stranger-level access. You provide exclusivity before exclusivity is negotiated. You surrender emotional monopoly before securing position. That is strategic incompetence. Attraction escalates in layers. Access should mirror investment. If she invests attention, you reciprocate proportionally. If she invests time, you match selectively. If she invests vulnerability, you respond measured. Never escalate faster than she does. When you escalate prematurely, you expose hunger. Hunger signals lack. Lack lowers value. Emotional leverage increases when you are willing to walk away, not as a tactic, as a truth. If you cannot detach from outcome, you are already owned. Detachment does not mean indifference, it means sovereignty. You enjoy her presence without requiring it. Requirement is weakness. Preference is power. This is the internal shift. Move from "I hope she chooses me" to "I evaluate whether this dynamic benefits me." Leverage begins when you stop fearing loss. Because the man who fears loss will always overcompensate. Overcompensation is visible. It leaks through tone, timing, phrasing, and it is read instantly. You think attraction is about what you add. It is about what you withhold. Not affection entirely, not warmth entirely. Certainty. Certainty should be earned, not donated. When she senses that your commitment is conditional on behavior, not guaranteed by default, her investment rises. People protect what they might lose. If you are impossible to lose, you are impossible to value. Emotional leverage is not cruelty. It is controlled access to your emotional world. And until you master that, you will continue confusing effort with power. Effort is visible. Power is measured by who adjusts last. You think attraction unfolds slowly. It doesn't. You are categorized within minutes. Not consciously, not verbally, but decisively. Women filter fast. They assess posture, speech rhythm, eye contact, emotional temperature, response timing. Then they sort you. Not into good or bad, into roles. And once you are assigned a role, everything you do is interpreted through that frame. There are three primary archetypes most men fall into: the provider, the performer, the sovereign. You are living inside one of them right now. The provider. The provider leads with usefulness. He offers help quickly, pays early, fixes problems, makes himself reliable. He signals stability before mystery. He believes value is proven through contribution. He thinks, if I show consistency, she'll feel secure. If I show effort, she'll see my worth. If I give more, she'll invest more. Wrong currency. Provision without tension creates comfort. Comfort without polarity creates neutrality. Neutral men are appreciated, not desired. The provider is rarely rejected aggressively. He is slowly deprioritized. Texts take longer. Plans become uncertain. Interest becomes polite. Why? Because he removes risk from her side. He is predictable. He is available. He is emotionally exposed early. Predictability lowers perceived dominance. Selection does not reward the man who guarantees himself before he is earned. The provider is stable, but stability without edge is background noise. The performer. The performer leads with stimulation. He jokes, teases, shows status symbols, posts strategically, speaks loudly, moves fast. He creates spikes of emotion. He understands tension better than the provider. But he depends on reaction. His confidence rises when she laughs, drops when she withdraws, spikes when she chases, crashes when she tests. The performer is externally fueled. He mistakes attention for position. Women enjoy the performer. He's exciting, but they sense the dependency beneath the charisma. Because when the reaction fades, so does his dominance. He needs to be seen. Need is detectable. The performer can create attraction. He struggles to sustain respect. The sovereign. The rare one. The sovereign does not lead with usefulness. He does not lead with entertainment. He leads with self-containment. His schedule does not bend easily. His emotional state does not fluctuate visibly. His approval is not automatic. He observes before investing. He speaks less than he knows. He does not rush disclosure. He is not cold. He is measured. He does not compete for attention. He assumes he qualifies himself. This shifts the polarity immediately. When a woman senses she is being evaluated, not worshipped, her behavior changes. Because now she is in motion. She invests, she signals, she tests. The sovereign passes tests by not reacting to them. If she withdraws slightly, he does not chase. If she provokes jealousy, he does not flinch. If she questions his boundaries, he enforces them calmly. Calm enforcement signals internal authority. Internal authority signals options. Options signal high selection value. This archetype does not fear loss. That is the difference. The provider fears being replaced. The performer fears being ignored. The sovereign fears wasting time. Fear direction determines behavior. Women sense which fear drives you, and they respond accordingly. If you fear loss, you cling. If you fear invisibility, you perform. If you fear mediocrity, you build. The sovereign builds. His identity is not anchored in female validation. It is anchored in mission, standards, and selective access. This creates a symmetry. When she feels slightly more invested, slightly more curious, slightly more uncertain, that tension builds attraction, not cruelty, contrast. The sovereign is not emotionally unavailable. He is emotionally disciplined. He does not reveal full depth early. Depth is layered, earned, timed. He understands that mystery sustains tension longer than exposure. Most men move from stranger to confession within days. The sovereign moves from intrigue to selective revelation over time. He's not trying to be chosen. He is filtering. This is the shift 99% of men never make. They think they need to increase value. They need to increase selectivity. Because when you operate as if you are scarce, behavior aligns. Scarcity is not arrogance, it is standards. If she senses you tolerate anything, she will test everything. If she senses you enforce calmly, she adjusts. Women sort you quickly. The question is not whether you are categorized. The question is which archetype you radiate without realizing. Because once you are framed as provider or performer, climbing into sovereign becomes difficult. First impressions are psychological contracts, and most men sign them unconsciously. You keep trying to moralize attraction. You want it to be fair. You want it to reward decency. You want it to punish arrogance. Selection does none of that. Selection is ancient, older than your ethics, older than your social programming. It does not ask who deserves love. It asks who survives pressure. Across history, men were not chosen for kindness alone. They were chosen for capacity to lead, protect, dominate environments, command resources, maintain composure under threat. Not because women were cruel, because survival filtered preferences. In unstable times, emotional fragility was liability. In dangerous environments, hesitation was costly. Calm. Dominance increased odds of continuity. Those patterns do not disappear because modern life is comfortable. They evolve in form. The battlefield changed, the filter did not. Today the threats are social, economic, psychological, but the evaluation still measures strength markers, status control, emotional regulation, decisiveness, scarcity. You assume modern dating operates on declared values. It operates on subconscious cues. When a woman says she wants a nice guy, she is describing safety. When she feels attraction, she is responding to polarity. Safety keeps, polarity pulls. If you collapse into safety too early, you erase pull. This is where most men accuse hypocrisy. She said she wanted stability. She said she didn't want games. She said she was tired of toxic men. And yet, she gravitates toward the man who is slightly unpredictable, slightly harder to access, slightly less emotionally dependent. You call that contradiction. It's not. Selection is layered. Conscious mind wants comfort. Subconscious responds to power signals. Power signals are not loud aggression. They are emotional independence, social proof, calm detachment, outcome indifference. Indifference is misread as cruelty by men who are over-invested. But indifference in this context means, I am fine with or without this. That posture shifts hierarchy. Hierarchy is always present, even when unspoken. Who texts first more often? Who reschedules more frequently? Who explains themselves more? Who waits longer for replies? Micro-behaviors reveal structure. Selection observes structure. The man lower in hierarchy adapts more, and the one who adapts more slowly becomes reference point. In evolutionary terms, reference points were leaders. Today, they are men who control emotional tempo. This is why extreme agreeableness backfires. Agreeableness signals compliance. Compliance signals lower rank. Lower rank reduces polarity. Polarity requires contrast. Contrast requires tension. You were trained to eliminate tension. But tension is not conflict. It is difference in energy. When you constantly mirror her opinions to maintain harmony, you flatten contrast. When you state your stance calmly, even if it disagrees, you create edge. Edge triggers assessment. Assessment triggers attention. Attention precedes attraction. Selection has no morality. It has criteria. Strength, composure, scarcity, non-neediness. Neediness is not asking for something. It is fearing its absence. When your tone tightens after delayed responses, you reveal fear. When your messaging frequency increases after slight withdrawal, you reveal fear. When you overcompensate with gifts or praise after sensing distance, you reveal fear. Fear lowers rank instantly. And once rank drops, recovering it is difficult. Historically, tribes did not choose leaders based on reassurance. They chose based on resilience under stress. Modern dynamics echo that pattern. If minor social friction destabilizes you, you signal fragility. Fragility is filtered out. This does not mean women consciously strategize like generals. Selection is intuitive. It feels right or wrong, comfortable or dull, intense or flat, grounded or shaky. Your job is not to argue with selection. It is to understand it. Most men resist this chapter because it removes the comforting belief that effort guarantees outcome. It doesn't. You can be loyal and lose. You can be kind and be overlooked. You can be consistent and be replaced. Not because you are inadequate, because selection does not reward morality. It rewards perceived advantage. If another man appears more emotionally detached, more socially valued, more internally anchored, he shifts the scale. You think love protects against this. Love is built after attraction stabilizes. Attraction precedes loyalty, and attraction is competitive. The uncomfortable truth. Women respond to men who look like they have options, not because they enjoy competition, because options signal validation from the broader environment. Pre-selection amplifies value perception. If other women want you, it suggests you passed other filters. Social proof reduces perceived risk. Risk management is embedded in selection. Again, no morality, just filtration. If you internalize this, bitterness disappears. Because you stop expecting fairness. You start optimizing position. You stop trying to be good enough. You start becoming hard to replace. Selection cannot be debated. It can only be navigated. You don't fix imbalance by giving more. You fix imbalance by stepping back. Most men react to instability with increased effort. She pulls away. You lean in. She delays. You accelerate. She becomes distant. You attempt reassurance. You call that fighting for connection. It is panic disguised as persistence. Strategic withdrawal is not sulking. It is recalibration. When investment becomes uneven, the instinct is to restore it through volume. More texts, more attention, more emotional access. That deepens the asymmetry. If she invests less and you invest more, hierarchy widens. Instead, you reduce output, not dramatically, not theatrically, subtly. Match energy. Match frequency, match depth, never exceed. When she sends short responses, you mirror brevity. When she delays, you delay proportionally. When she withdraws slightly, you create space rather than chase proximity. This does two things. First, it restores symmetry. Second, it tests genuine interest. If interest exists, she will lean forward into the space you created. If it doesn't, she fades. Either outcome benefits you. Strategic withdrawal reveals truth without confrontation. Most men are afraid of silence. Silence exposes insecurity. When conversation pauses, your mind races. You imagine replacement. You imagine loss. You imagine missteps. So you fill the gap. The sovereign does not fill gaps impulsively. He lets silence breathe. Silence creates psychological tension. Tension forces movement. Whoever breaks silence first often signals higher need. Controlled presence is the other half of this equation. You are not disappearing. You are reducing emotional leakage. Emotional leakage is excessive validation, constant availability, unnecessary explanation. When you are always reachable, always agreeable, always expressive, you become predictable infrastructure. Infrastructure is useful. It is not magnetic. Magnetism requires selective exposure. You do not reveal your entire schedule. You do not provide real-time updates on your emotions. You do not narrate every thought. You allow partial access. Access must feel earned. When she feels she has full access immediately, curiosity drops. When she feels access increases gradually based on investment, attachment forms. Attachment grows from earned progression. Another mistake, overcorrecting into cold detachment. Strategic withdrawal is measured, not dramatic. If you suddenly vanish, act indifferent, or become hostile, you reveal tactic. Tactics are transparent. Strength is calm. When you reduce investment, do it naturally. Focus on your schedule, your work, your mission, your physical training, your social expansion, not as performance, as priority. When your life has genuine gravity, you do not need to simulate scarcity. Scarcity becomes real. Controlled presence means when you engage fully. Direct eye contact, clear speech, decisive planning, no tentative energy. If you suggest meeting, you propose a specific time. If she cannot make it, you let her offer alternative. You do not chase confirmation. You do not negotiate your own invitation repeatedly. If she declines without counteroffer, you step back. Interest invests. Lukewarm energy should not be rescued. Strategic withdrawal also applies emotionally. If she tests you, minor jealousy triggers, subtle provocations, delayed responses meant to provoke insecurity, you do not escalate. You remain neutral. Neutrality under pressure signals internal stability. Instability invites dominance. When she senses that emotional games do not move you, she recalibrates. Because games require reaction. No reaction, no game. This is where most men fail. They intellectually understand detachment. They emotionally collapse under ambiguity. Ambiguity feels like loss of control. But ambiguity is leverage. The man comfortable in ambiguity controls pacing. The man desperate for clarity gives up control. Clarity should emerge from mutual escalation, not interrogation. If you need constant reassurance, you are negotiating from weakness. Instead, observe patterns over time. Consistency of effort, consistency of respect, consistency of responsiveness. Patterns reveal intent more accurately than words. Controlled presence means you do not argue about position. You demonstrate it. Your time is scheduled. Your standards are enforced quietly. Your attention is limited. Limited attention increases perceived value. Unlimited attention becomes baseline, and baseline is ignored. The shift is internal. From, how do I keep her interested? To, does her behavior meet my standard? When you operate from evaluation, your behavior changes automatically. You stop over-investing early. You stop chasing inconsistent energy. You stop rewarding disrespect with patience. Patience without boundaries is weakness. Patience with standards is strength. Strategic withdrawal is not about manipulation. It is about removing excess supply. When supply decreases, demand clarifies. And if demand does not rise, you walk. Because controlled presence only works if exit is real. If you are unwilling to leave, all restraint is performance. And performance eventually cracks. This is where most men stop. They understand tactics. They try controlled silence. They reduce texting. They mirror energy. But internally, nothing changed. You are still seeking approval, and women detect internal posture faster than external strategy. You can withdraw physically while still craving validation psychologically. That contradiction leaks. The approval-seeking identity was built early. You were rewarded for compliance, praised for being agreeable. validated for being emotionally accommodating. You learned that acceptance comes from pleasing. That identity does not disappear because you watched a video. It must be dismantled. The approval seeker fears disapproval more than he values self-respect. So he laughs at jokes he doesn't like, agrees with opinions he doesn't hold, tolerates behavior that irritates him, overlooks minor disrespect to maintain harmony at the cost of hierarchy. Hierarchy always recalibrates downward for the man who tolerates everything. If nothing costs access to you, your access has no value. The approval seeker also over-explains. He clarifies intentions to avoid misunderstanding. He reassures to prevent distance. He apologizes preemptively to avoid tension. He tries to manage perception constantly. Management signals insecurity. The sovereign does not manage perception obsessively. He manages standards. If she misinterprets and withdraws prematurely, he lets her, because he does not beg to be understood. He is willing to be misread by those who lack depth. That is strength. Killing the approval-seeking identity requires one internal decision. Your worth is not negotiated through female response. Right now, your confidence fluctuates based on engagement metrics, texts, tone, enthusiasm. That means your baseline is externally controlled. Externally controlled men are predictable. Predictable men are safe. Safe men are not filtered as leaders. You must detach your self-concept from romantic success. Your physique, your finances, your competence, your network, your mission. These build internal authority. Authority reduces need. When you know you are building something real, rejection loses emotional weight. And when rejection loses weight, your behavior changes subtly. You stop trying to impress. Impressing is low-rank behavior. High-rank behavior is indifferent to evaluation. Indifference does not mean arrogance. It means outcome independence. If she leaves, your trajectory remains intact. If she stays, she integrates into an already moving system. You are not building your life around attraction. Attraction becomes a byproduct of structure. The approval seeker rearranges his schedule to fit hers. The sovereign invites her into his schedule selectively. One adapts entirely. One integrates conditionally. This chapter is identity death. You cannot maintain the same emotional reflexes and expect different dynamics. If delayed responses still trigger anxiety, you are attached. If minor distance still triggers overcompensation, you are attached. Attachment before exclusivity is weakness. You must become comfortable with loss. Not philosophically, practically. Go days without initiating. Allow ambiguity without interrogation. Walk away from inconsistent effort without speech. Silence is powerful when it comes from strength, not resentment. Resentment seeks reaction. Strength requires nothing. The approval seeker fears being alone, so he tolerates misalignment. The sovereign fears wasted time more than solitude. Solitude strengthens frame. Desperation fractures it. Women respond differently to men who do not fear absence, because fear changes micro-behaviors. Tone, pacing, posture, eye movement. Subconscious reads it instantly. You cannot fake non-neediness. You must cultivate it. That means expanding your world beyond romantic pursuit. Training harder, earning more, reading deeper, building alliances, improving social leverage. When your life expands, your need contracts. And when your need contracts, your power rises. The approval seeker asks, how do I get her to choose me? The sovereign asks, is she aligned with my direction? Direction is attractive. Drift is not. If you have no mission, you will make women the mission. And when they sense that, polarity collapses. Because now they are your source of meaning. Meaning should never be outsourced. Kill the identity that begs. Build the identity that evaluates. Once that shift is real, not performed, your presence changes. Less urgency, less explaining, more calm pauses, more deliberate speech. You no longer chase being liked. You enforce being respected. And respect precedes lasting attraction. Now comes the part most men reject. Not because it's false, because it threatens their ego. You want to believe you were unlucky, misunderstood, unappreciated. You don't want to believe you were operating from weakness. But here is the final law. Most men will hear this and change nothing. They will nod. They will agree. They will even try minor behavioral adjustments. Then, the moment attraction feels uncertain, they will relapse into approval seeking. Why? Because sovereignty is lonely at first. When you stop over-texting, silence expands. When you stop chasing, some women disappear. When you enforce standards, access decreases. That phase feels like loss. It is not loss. It is filtration. You are shedding dynamics built on imbalance. Most men cannot tolerate temporary emptiness, so they return to chasing. They would rather have unstable attention than stable solitude. That is why 99% stay average. They optimize for immediate validation over long-term leverage. This is the final filter. Can you endure being misunderstood? Can you endure short-term dryness? Can you endure walking away without explanation? If not, you will default back to performance. Because performance gives quick dopamine. Sovereignty gives delayed power. Women are not the enemy. Weak positioning is. The uncomfortable truth. Many of your past failures were not about incompatibility. They were about hierarchy. You placed her above you emotionally before she earned it. You surrendered leverage early. You revealed hunger. And hunger is never attractive. The elite minority understands something simple. Attraction is a byproduct of position. Position is a byproduct of identity. Identity is a choice reinforced daily. If you maintain discipline in your time, your body, your finances, your speech, you radiate control. Control reduces chaos. Women gravitate toward controlled men because they feel structured. Structure implies safety without submission. But you cannot fake structure if your life is disorganized, if your mood fluctuates wildly, if your goals are unclear. No tactic will compensate. The final warning is this. Do not turn these principles into manipulation. Manipulation is reactive strategy. Sovereignty is proactive structure. If you use silence to provoke jealousy, you are still seeking reaction. If you withdraw to test her constantly, you are still attached. The shift must be internal. You genuinely do not fear losing what does not align. You genuinely prefer solitude over disrespect. You genuinely evaluate before investing. That authenticity is rare, and rarity creates gravity. From this point forward, you have two paths. Return to comfort, or refine into the minority. Comfort says, be nice, be available, hope she sees your value. Refinement says, build value, control access, let selection respond. One path keeps you safe, the other makes you scarce, and scarcity is power. Most men will never internalize this. They will continue arguing fairness. They will continue blaming women. They will continue overinvesting early, and they will continue being confused. The minority will shift silently. Less talking, more building, less chasing, more selecting. No announcements, no emotional speeches, just behavioral recalibration. You don't need to dominate women. You need to dominate yourself. Because once you do, dynamics reorganize naturally. This is not about becoming colder. It's about becoming unshakable. The moment you stop needing to be chosen, you become the chooser.